Good morning, everybody. You know, when I was asked to speak on Labor Day weekend, it was like there's going to be like 5 people there. So I'm actually very happy to see such a full sanctuary this morning. So thank you, everybody, for coming this morning. So as I was introduced, my name is Lori, and I'm a writer and a mother. I have 3 children. 2 boys and a girl. I have the oldest is 15, the middle one is 12, and my youngest is 5. And she's sitting back there. The boys are not here, so I can talk about them all throughout this sermon, and it's okay. Hopefully they'll never know. The title of my talk today is The Tao of Motherhood. So in 2009, I spoke on a panel about writing and motherhood. Most of the other panelists talked about how the two were mutually exclusive. I, on the other hand, talked about how having my 2 sons actually made me a more efficient writer. I feverishly wrote during their nap times. Sometimes I could scrape enough money together to hire a babysitter for a few hours a week, and then I would write like my life depended on it during those precious hours of freedom. And I got a lot done, actually way more than when I was without children and spent a lot of time waiting for inspiration to hit and lamenting the fact that, nothing was going my way. Having those children gave me purpose, and they made me very efficient. So I actually wrote 2 books when my boys were still quite young, and I felt like I was managing to be a good enough writer and a good enough mother. But then I had my daughter, and the balance I had discovered quickly fell out of whack. First of all, my husband and I were now outnumbered. Also, when I had my daughter in 2011, I had a full-time job, something I didn't have when my 2 other children were young. And the job I had was not just any job. It was a tenure-track academic position at Temple University. And just as an aside, for those of you who are not in that world, statistics show that the best way to sink a tenure-track career is to have a child. I had 3. So clearly I wasn't doing things in a way that made a lot of sense to most people, and not even to myself in retrospect. But that was my life, and I had to make it work. Just to be clear, I never ever resented or regretted having children. Anybody who knows me, who knew me from a young age, knew that the 2 dreams I ever had was to be a mother and to be a writer. So I loved what my life was, but it was very difficult to make it all work. I didn't want things to be different, but I had to figure out a way to make it all make sense. I had to figure out a way to live my life where it didn't feel like I was swimming upstream every single day. I needed a new lens in which to view my current circumstances. In short, I needed to find a way to be peaceful and content in the midst of the frenetic chaos my life had become. I remembered a book a friend gave to me right after I had my first son. It was called Surrender to Motherhood. The author was a journalist named Iris Krasnow. And like me, Krasnow was a writer. She had a very exciting life as a journalist, more exciting than my life, I have to say. She traveled all over the world. She followed celebrities. She interviewed the Queen of Jordan. I never did that. I did interview Beyonce once, but that was the extent of the highlight of my journalism career. So Krasnow married relatively late. She had her first child at age 39, and then had 3 more children in less than 3 years. She had twins. That's how that worked. And like me, she found herself, and they were all boys, 4 boys. Like me, she found herself struggling mightily, trying to balance raising her children with a career, as well with the notion that she was supposed to be able to figure out how to have it all. For Krasnow, the answer was to abandon her career aspirations while her children were young and instead to just focus on her family while she could. She wrote, quote, "Having small kids is like the last day of summer vacation when you are savoring every second coming at you, when you merge with that wonderful, intense central part of being, the sun on your face, the sand at your feet. My children finally forced me to stop, to be present in the present, and to be happy at that destination. Immersed in the glory of my kids, I abandoned the restless desire to climb higher and higher." So for Krasnow, surrendering to motherhood meant pushing the pause button on her career and other ambitions and focusing entirely on motherhood because trying to have it all was impossible. I couldn't do that for many reasons. I didn't have the luxury at this time in my life to quit my job and just focus on my kids. But if I stopped and really thought about what motherhood had taught me thus far, I realized that I already possessed the knowledge needed to make it through motherhood, a demanding job, and pretty much life in general. And not just make it through, but make it through in peace and with contentment. So a lot of people look at me and they think I'm crazy or some kind of superwoman because I smile a lot. I seem to be happy most of the time. And some people think it's because I'm from Wisconsin. You know, people from the Midwest, we just have a sunny disposition on life, keep on trucking. But I attribute it to the fact that I have discovered the Tao of Motherhood, and I'm going to share what that means with you today. And keep in mind, I've not mastered the Tao at all. But it is a guiding force in this crazy, chaotic life that grants me the grace of acceptance. So a dictionary definition of Taoism states that Taoism is a religious or philosophical tradition with an emphasis on living in harmony with and in accordance to the natural flow or cosmic structural order of the universe. In layman's terms, that means go with the flow. Taoist principles emphasize action through non-action, naturalness, simplicity, and spontaneity. Like Buddhism, a key component of Taoism is also to drop all expectations, let go. The natural result of this harmonious way of living is happiness. So here's how motherhood prepares you for a Taoist way of life. 3 basic principles that I learned from being a mother. First, this idea, go with the flow, or action through non-action. So before I had children, I made plans. I planned everything. I was a big planner. After children, I had to learn to go with the flow because plans are always broken. If I didn't make plans, when a child threw up on the morning of my birthday, I wouldn't be upset. I had no parties to cancel. Instead, if I managed to convince my husband to watch Pukey Kid while I took myself to the movies, I was overjoyed. I had happiness. Notice this was also a nod to spontaneity and simplicity as well. I go with the flow because you never know what's going to happen with children. And if you try to control the outcome, you almost always will lose. People think I'm an awful planner. People tell me I'm terrible because I never plan play dates. I don't make, even vacation plans. I kind of do them on the fly at the last minute because I have learned through motherhood that these things often have to get canceled. They don't work out the way you want them to. Something always happens. Because I've let go of that need to know and to plan, I keep myself from disappointment, both myself and others. This leads to my next point, which is to drop expectations, to let go of expectations. This is how I learned that lesson. I am the daughter of a woman with 10 sisters. I grew up with an older sister. I have a brother too, and he always hates it that I ignore it, that I just don't mention him, but he was 9 years younger than me, so I grew up with my sister. I went to a women's college. I expected to be the mother of girls. I just assumed my children would be girls. Instead, my first 2 children, the only children I thought I would have for a long time, were boys. I always wanted to be the mother, but I really never, that fantasy never included boys. I should have listened to my husband who told me I only make boys. I was still planning back then. So the way I approached raising my boys then was without expectations. I couldn't have any because I honestly didn't know the life of a boy. I really didn't know. So I parented them without any preconceived notions of what they should be. I gave them the freedom to be whomever they wanted or needed to be. And they both turned into amazing and unique individuals. By the time my daughter was born, I knew to approach my parenting style with her with the same freedom from expectations as I learned from my sons. And I actually think that having my daughter after my sons makes me a better mother for her, because I would have probably raised her wanting her to be a mini-me. She is very much not a mini-me, and that's quite okay. So far, I think it's working, having zero expectations. And I know it's hard. It's very hard to release yourself from having expectations. You can just have low ones. You don't have to make them zero right away. But if your threshold for achieving happiness is low, you will achieve that happiness so much easier. My expectations for my sons was to be healthy and happy. Not that they become football players or just like my father or my husband or my brother or super smart, just healthy and happy. They are. I'm happy. We're successful. Principle number 3 is that simplicity is best. This was a lesson learned early on in becoming a mother, and I'm sure anybody who's a parent, a grandparent, or an auntie, or just that favorite friend will know what I'm talking about. So, with my first child, we decided that we were only going to buy him wooden, all-natural toys from Sweden, right? We really knew exactly the kinds of toys we were going to get him to make him, just a happy kid. But even with that plan, my child liked to play with my hair, my car keys, and empty boxes. He didn't want toys. He didn't need toys to be happy. He also didn't like frosting or cake either. For his 3rd birthday, he asked for a fruit platter. By watching my children play and seeing what makes them happy, it's often so simple. Babies want a set of keys. My 5-year-old daughter wants to play with an empty paper towel roll. By looking at the world through my children's eyes, I realize how very little is needed to make them happy and to make me happy. Watching them, seeing them happy gives me joy. Most of what I need to make me happy is within my arm's reach. I don't need fancy toys. I don't need fancy clothes. I don't even need fancy food, even though it always looks so beautiful in pictures and restaurants, in the commercials. I don't really need it. I am entertained often by my children, or even just quiet time where I can read. If my clothes fit me, keep me warm or cool, and are comfortable, I'm good. My husband grows tomatoes on the side of our house. He chops one, adds a little bit of olive oil and vinegar, and it's divine. Such simplicity makes me happy. So I'm going to repeat. This is how simple Taoism, the Tao of motherhood, the Tao of whatever is. Simplicity is best. Drop expectations. Go with the flow. These are basic life lessons that if you can follow them, can lead to happiness. And you can learn them simply by parenting a child. Although parenting a child isn't required to learn these lessons, Winnie the Pooh also figured out the Tao as well. So you can glean these very same lessons by reading The House on Pooh Corner. But here it is in a nutshell, cribbed from Benjamin Hoff, who wrote The Tao of Pooh. The basic Taoism is simply a particular way of appreciating, learning from, and working with whatever happens in everyday life. From the Taoist point of view, the natural result of this harmonious living is happiness. Ironically, here we are on Labor Day talking about lessons learned from motherhood. And of course, the most obvious lesson learned is from the act of labor. When I went into labor with my first son, I quickly realized that everything I had done to prepare for that moment was useless. The pain was stronger, and the process was faster than anything I had expected. I wasn't in control. I could barely think clearly. My water broke just as my sister pulled up into the hospital driveway. I didn't know what to do, but my body did. All I could do was hold on for the ride. All I could do was surrender to motherhood. I let go of expectations. I went with the flow and tried to focus on the simple things like breathing, pushing, keeping my screams down to a decibel below 10. And my reward was not a pain-free labor. My reward was my child, and he was a gift that continues to fill me and my life with utter joy and happiness. This is a lesson that I reiterate these are lessons, I should say, that I have not managed to make perfect in my life. It is a continuing path, but all I have to do is look to my children to help me remember the Tao of motherhood. May you all find the Tao in your lives. So may it be. Amen.